Okay, we'll call to order our regular meeting of council today. And before we start, I was going to make some introductory remarks about public engagement. That said, we are going to postpone that to our next meeting. But I did want to just make the community aware, as Councillor Haggard is not able to be here today and wasn't able to be here at our last meeting either. She wanted the community to know that that was due to an unexpected surgery. She hopes to be back in mid-March, and while she's away, she's keeping on top of council agendas and watching all of our meetings, I'm sure, while she is recovering at home. So we hope that she will recover well, and definitely wish her well as she goes through that. So we do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add to the agenda? Councillor Corbie.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like a update on the letter that we were going to provide to the province, giving the community some input into the old growth deferral. And as well, it was, I think, the December 13th meeting, we directed staff to engage stakeholders to discuss what's going on with the Alberni Pacific Division and the continual layoffs there.
Great, so I'm just going to add those under unfinished business, item 2.
And
Councillor Soltau.
Madam Mayor, I just want to ask somewhere about street painting.
Great.
Thank you.
And I think, should we add that under unfinished business or new business? I think it has come to council and we were waiting for an update. Okay. We'll put it item 3 under unfinished business.
Thank you.
Okay. And any late items to add from the corporate officer?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Then with that, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda as amended?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Corbie. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we will just recognize and appreciate as well that we are holding our meeting today from the unceded territories of the Sushot and Hupachesset First Nations. And we have minutes from the special meeting held at 10 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on January 31st, 2021. Would somebody like to move adoption?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Washington, seconded by Councillor Corbie. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And that brings us to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to council. We take up to four speakers for 3 minutes each. Would any members of the public like to speak today? Okay, seeing none, there is another opportunity at the end of our council meetings for questions. So we'll move on to delegations, and our delegation today, we have Joanne Sales from the Broombusters. Come on forward, Joanne.
Oops. Let me just make sure I understand that I'm doing this right. So I'm, okay, and then to go back. Yes, okay. Hello, my name is Joanne Sales. I'm the Executive Director of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. And good afternoon, Mayor Minions and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Today I'm going to quickly go through photos to remind you how what a serious threat Scotch broom is, and talk about activities in the Alberni Valley, and then get to the main point today, which is urban interface fires. Actually, the pandemic was good for Broombusters because it was a good excuse for people to get out on their own. 2020, 400 volunteers on Vancouver Island and Powell River cut broom over 5,000 hours. And last year, 600 volunteers over 7,000 hours. That's a lot of people cutting broom. And a lot of that was going on in the Alberni Valley. And we thank Port Alberni for supporting Broombusters since 2007. It was off and on in the beginning. It's really steady now. We're asking the city for continued support by collecting the cut broom, promoting broombuster efforts during the season, and allowing a few signs in the city. And also, we would like to work more with the fire department and parks, so we would just like to know how to do that. So what is wrong with Scotch broom? It's an alien invasive plant, spreads rapidly, forms dense thickets, crowds out native plants, prevents forest regrowth, and that is very important. Leads to dramatic loss of diversity, is highly flammable, toxic to grazing animals and wildlife, and takes over farm, forest, and parkland. How bad does it get? Really bad. These photos are from New Zealand. Broom has taken over farm, forest, greenland all over the world. And as forests disappear in BC from either harvesting or forest fires, this could happen here. So broom moves anywhere that there's open space, spreads rapidly. A single plant produces over 18,000 seeds viable for 20 to 40 or more years in the soil. And broom grows huge quickly, and it strangles native species. Fortunately, in the Alberni Valley, we have people that are going after the broom. These are photos from a cut that was organized by Alberni Valley Nature Club at the Somas Estuary. And it was a multi-day cut, including broom buster volunteers. When there is a problem this big, it does require cooperation between community organizations and media, ministries, and government at all levels. The size of these piles are just amazing. So these are more the same place, and the bottom right photo is the cleared broom. And there will be some that will come back, but you'll go after it. It'll be less the next year and less the next year. So kudos to the Alberni Valley Nature Club, and the local broom busters really enjoyed working with them. So there were fewer cuts last year, but they were very big cuts. Okay, so this was behind the athletic club. And here's photos. There was a cuts on Hospital Hill. And there's one of many piles on 3rd Avenue, and behind Staples was a huge cut. As you can see, the size of that pile is quite amazing. So, moving on to the whole issue of broom on the island and on the planet. So climate change is bringing us hotter, drier, longer summers. So the one photo that you see is, that's winter broom. That's what we see now. That was a big field that was cleared of trees, and then the developer just left it, and it just got taken over by broom. So in the summer, it looks like the spring broom. And broom has high oil content and naturally occurring dead branches. So in the summer, with longer, hotter summers, we end up with more of what looks like the bottom right-hand side. Summer broom, dry and flammable. So, let's see. This is a quote about the fire danger. This is by Terry Peters, the fire chief of Powell River. Okay, Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It will increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, and make fires more difficult to fight. If you look at the picture on the right, the fire truck is in that little right-hand corner there, and there's a man standing there. When fire hits Scotch broom, it's like pouring kerosene on a fire. And reports from California, when it hits when wildfires hit the broom patches, it becomes much more extreme. This is another quote from Terry Peters. He says, "I head up the local chapter of broom busters in Powell River, not only for the invasive properties of the Scotch broom, but more so because broom is a significant threat as a fire hazard for urban interface fires within our region." So we're learning a lot of new technology because of climate change. Heat domes, atmospheric rivers, and now wildland urban interface fires, or simply urban interface fires. And it's important that we take notice of the fire in Boulder County, Colorado, that burned 1,000 homes last December. This was an urban interface fire. So was the fire that destroyed Lytton. We know that prolonged drought and heat caused by climate change can have disastrous consequences even within populated residential areas. Scotch broom makes the situation only worse. Okay, so this is not from Port Alberni area, but I wanted to show these photos so that you can see how quickly broom can take over a cleared area. Okay, so this, in 2019, in the fall, many hectares of forest were harvested for sale or development. Land is now up for sale on Alberni Highway outside Parksville, leaving the soil degraded and bare. You can see how bad the soil looks. It's just rocky and no topsoil left there. In the spring of 2020, broom busters tried to cut the broom down to stop some more of the seeds from going onto the land. Okay, but you can see by the fall that the seeds had started to sprout, and that was less than a year. But this is only 2 growing seasons later. So you have the spring of 2020, and then you have the fall of 2021. So from second growth forest to a flammable broom forest in 2 growing seasons. I was actually astonished by how quickly the broom took over. So now this isn't in Port Alberni, but I think it's important because I do get calls every year from people that have acreage and farms and so on, and they're wondering, what do we do, to get rid of this broom? Because forests do not grow back under broom. Broom changes the soil chemistry, making it not hospitable to our native species. Another problem is the BC Hydro power lines. So broom on BC Hydro transmission lines creates an easy path for fire to travel across the island. So this is, it's easy to see the broom in the spring when it's blooming, but we saw the pictures of what it looks like when it's dry and in the summer. So BC Hydro doesn't do anything to control the broom because they actually like it. Broom keeps trees from growing, and that's the reason why we don't like it. When a fire hits broom, it's like pouring kerosene on it. And so now an open highway of broom stretches from Nile Creek to here and beyond in all directions. By not setting standards for land care, we are literally playing with fire. So broom busters have taken on an impossible task, and we know that. And we are succeeding in the towns. In fact, I want to say I was quite impressed driving into town today that so much of the broom, as you drive towards the hospital and beyond, is gone now. It looks great. But the problems created by broom spreading on private land, cleared forest lands, and under power lines is absolutely beyond us to do anything about. Residents and tourists don't like to see clear cuts or land taken over by invasive plants. Fields of broom are like broken windows on abandoned buildings. They're signs of indifference and neglect. We are not indifferent, but what can we do? It is beyond the role of broom busters to do anything about it, and it's also beyond the scope of a single council of Port Alberni. But it's not beyond the rights, powers, and responsibilities of the collective councils and governing bodies of Vancouver Island and BC. We simply can't let Vancouver Island be covered with Scotch broom. Broom busters was asked to clear a broom on a farm close to Parksville, one of the private properties of a foreign investor who had bought up thousands of hectares of Canada for his portfolio. Okay, we declined to help him on that farm because the broom was already too widely spread. But why are foreign investors allowed to buy up Canada and then neglect the land? Our children will need these farms and forests in healthy condition. And with invasive plants, you can't go back in time and fix things. At best, the damage will last for many decades. And it's just important that this innocent-looking little plant there on the left leads to this, and another picture of the power lines leads to this. Currently, broom busters, our attitude is just to try to educate about the situation created by Scotch broom, invite and inspire others to participate, and save what we can. So this, I've always said, these are the reasons why we're cutting the broom, is for future generations. The young people in these photos are now teenagers, and they know that they need our help. In fact, the cute little girl in the cart is one of the students who sits outside the Qualicum Beach Town Hall all day, every Friday, as part of the Global Fridays for the Future climate protests. So far, 25 Fridays in a row. They know that they're in trouble, and we do too. And one thing we can do to help them is to stop the abuse of land and the broom invasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for coming and for continuing to come every year. It's so important to keep working on getting this message out, and just really appreciate that you do that consistently. I wanted to introduce you to our fire chief, who is sitting at the back of the room.
Oh, good. Hello.
Chief Mike Owens. I saw him getting his business cards out, so I think he's ready to connect with you.
Okay.
And just wondering if, I don't recall this coming to UBCM specifically, like in terms of action around, pushing for action around BC Hydro and how their treatment of broom. Are you aware of any work happening there?
I try reaching out to BC Hydro and talking to them, and I get the same, it's not all our broom, it's coming from private land, so that's not the truth. It's going there, then it gets on private land. Yeah. I did talk to, is it AVICC? Yeah, a number of years ago, and that was actually quite successful because a number of communities then became active based on that presentation. So I think that's really what we're hoping for, is that this will be brought to the whole community of councils. It's not one council's problem. It's all of Vancouver Island. And now we have, communities on the mainland. Coquitlam is becoming active this year, so it's like they've got the same problem. They're later, they're behind us.
Yeah.
We've got the most broom, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there's certainly, there's work individually that each of our councils can do. And then I think there's potentially a greater push for our councils to join together and try to put some more pressure on organizations like BC Hydro to recognize the threat that exists from how they're treating their right-of-ways. So we'll maybe start by doing some research on if anything has come to UBCM before. AVICC is kind of the level below UBCM, so sometimes a resolution will go to AVICC and then progress to UBCM for a greater push, and it can be a really useful tool, especially when there's a really specific issue like this that absolutely can be addressed by Hydro maintaining their lands in different ways.
Right. Well, we appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I see it every year, and it reminds me of what's going on. When I was younger, I used to think, oh, what pretty flowers, let them grow.
Yes.
So with that, I'm leading into education. I saw that you had some young people in the presentation, but are you hitting the schools? Are you going to the schools and letting the young people know what these are and maybe stay away from them too, because they're healthiest risk too, I'm sure. So I'll let you answer that, and then I'll just carry on here.
Well, in Oceanside, we work with a couple schools, and Nanaimo, it really depends on a school teacher inviting us in. Comox Valley, a lot of things have kind of fallen apart for the past couple of years, but they regularly would talk to the science club, science classes in 10th grade. So, it's nice to get young people involved in cutting it, but in some cases, we've cut all the broom that's close to the schools, so now it requires transportation, which is another whole level of involvement. So,
but even younger, elementary, I mean, that's where they pick it up and they carry on with it.
Yeah.
So, and the other one is government funding. Are you getting any government funding?
Yeah, we get help from the gaming board.
Okay,
and that's how we buy our tools and so on, yes.
Okay, and that also brought me to the BC Hydro. I mean, it's provincial, right? So the government, you would think the provincial and even forestry be part of this funding would be great.
Right.
So.
One thing about forestry, I just want to make sure that we're not saying we're against forestry. It's just that the land, it needs to be done kindly to the soil so that the things can regrow, and the land needs to be taken care of.
I didn't think of that.
No, it wasn't relation to what you just said, but I felt like I needed to add that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil, and then Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the idea time to cut this down is when it's in bloom?
Yes.
And what time of the year is that?
It's usually mid-April to the end of May. When we first made our slogan, Cut Broom and Bloom, it was Cut Broom in June. That was in 2006. That's how we've had to shift it, but actually more accurately is Cut in Bloom. So it really kind of depends. In March in California, So here it's mid-April to May.
So the city has a bylaw on nuisance plants, and I'm pretty sure broom is included in that.
Yes.
I wonder if we couldn't put something in the paper a little closer to May, saying, bylaw such and such says you must do that, and maybe we have your website identified if people need more information. That seems a lot easier than having our bylaw people run all over the place.
That would be such a big help, yes.
Yeah, so, okay, something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the timing is the important part so that the seeds don't leave the plant as you're lugging them through the ditches and up onto the highway and stuff. If you do it later, the seeds will escape after.
Yeah. And, because it's like people who have private land, they actually can cut later and the broom will still die. But we stop before, even when you start to see the seed pods, that are that big, just because we don't want to spread it. And we want also to be able to frequently just chip it back in place, so it's not even carted off. So you don't want to have the seeds, more seeds there. So that's the reason.
Okay, thank you. Twyla, if we were to explore if UBCM has ever had a resolution specifically around BC Hydro's management of Broome, do we need a resolution for that, or is it something we can just look into?
We can certainly look into that for council, and if there is something, bring it back for your information.
That would be great. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you so much again for coming today, Joanne.
Thank you. I always enjoy seeing
and for the work that you and all the volunteers are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item number 1 from the Director of Finance, we have the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So as we have done in the past couple of years, we've had the Q&A that has been provided to Council and the public to follow up any questions that have been asked from the public or Council. So we have populated the questions to our best ability, and we do have some questions that Councillor Corbie had provided to me post-meeting, and those are now answered in the Q&A. So if there's anything that Council would like to pull out and address, I'm here to speak to those items.
Okay. Questions or comments from Council? Councillor Corbie.
I just have a comment. I really want to thank Andrew. He got a hold of me and we went through the questions, and he explained a number of things which I didn't fully understand. So thank you, Andrew, for taking the time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this point? Also an opportunity to add any questions if there are any prior to our next budget meeting. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Andrew. Appreciate this, and the continual document coming back to us at every meeting as well is certainly helpful. Okay, we will move on to just a quick update on the old growth deferral letter and the APD layoffs meeting. I can provide update that we do have a meeting scheduled coming up, I believe, with Brad McRae from Western.
We did have a meeting, and then that got changed, and so we'll have to reschedule that meeting. Mr. McRae, through Western Forest Products, does keep in communication with the city and has been provided updates on the APD curtailment in the past. I don't have anything new, although him and I have played a bit of missed messages over the last day or two. So if he does provide an update on that, I will certainly provide that information to council.
Okay, and so we're going to work on rescheduling that meeting. Okay, great. And when we do that, I think it would be great if we could schedule Councillor Corbie to attend that one as well. Okay. And is there an update on the old growth deferral letter that was being sent? I think that we were intending, Councillor Corbie made that motion, and council was intending, I wasn't here for that, but I think the intent was to reach out for opportunities to engage on old growth deferrals with provincial government and stakeholders, which we have been doing. I know there's been, quite a number of informal engagements with the provincial government and myself, as well as other members of council. And then, of course, our economic development manager has been engaging with industry stakeholders. I don't think we've formally sent the letter, though. I think there was some changes that were required to it. So just if there's anything to add there.
No, I think you provided a pretty accurate summary.
Okay, thanks. So, Councillor Corbie, we will look back at the letter that was written and make whatever updates need to be made, and then make sure that gets sent off.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And item number 3 was street line painting update. I think a question was asked at a previous meeting. Councillor Solda.
And I'm still getting a lot of people, Madam Mayor, asking me about the street painting on the line. They can't tell left and right, and there's no center line. So they're quite concerned, so I told them I'd bring it up, so.
Okay. And last year was through, unfortunately, again, the supply chain issue. We did not get as much regular street painting done last summer season as we normally would. Certainly that'll be something that we'll want to do this year, and I know our engineer actually reached out to multiple suppliers and to ensure that we would get adequate supplies this year. Part of it is also our street sweeper has already begun the winter cleanup. That'll start to help in some circumstances, but yes, we did not get as much line painting done last year as we normally would, and we are looking to secure adequate supplies to ensure we get caught up on that this year.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The actual line painting on the public roads, that's done by a contractor? We don't have that machine to run down the road?
Yeah, no, we usually have that done by a contractor. Yep.
Okay,
Some of the crosswalks we do ourselves.
great. Okay, thank you for that update. We'll move on to staff reports. Item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated February 14, 2022 be received, and checks numbering 149,945 to 150,029 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $635,566.28 be approved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item number 2 in staff reports from the fire chief, we have aerial apparatus and financial plan amendment and contract award.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm requesting that Council consider awarding a contract to SafeTech fire trucks in the amount of $1,863,886 plus applicable taxes to purchase a 100-foot platform, and to consider if Council wishes to include an idle mitigation system for an additional cost of $50,692 to reduce greenhouse gases emitted from this truck over the course of its life. So back in June, authorization was given to issue an RFP. During that meeting, there was some discussion regarding the possibility of aligning with other municipalities to leverage collective buying power to reduce costs. Subsequent to that meeting, we contacted Qualicum Beach Fire Department and began discussing the possibility of jointly authoring and releasing an RFP. Prior to releasing that RFP, the city became aware of an aerial apparatus which had been in service for 1 year, which was now available for purchase at a significant discount. As the city explored this potential purchase, Qualicum Beach moved ahead with releasing their RFP, and in mid-November, the city was informed that the used platform truck was no longer available for purchase. Recently, Civic Info BC became partners in a collaborative procurement program called Canoe Procurement Group of Canada. Canoe undertakes procurements on behalf of the membership to allow members to receive the best possible prices available, and will confirm on behalf of members that the best price is received. SafeTech Emergency Vehicles were the successful bidder on the Qualicum Beach RFP, and SafeTech is also an approved vendor through Canoe. Through the Canoe program, we were able to receive a quote from SafeTech, which essentially mirrors the RFP we had initially intended to release with Qualicum Beach. We are now seeking approval to award the purchase to SafeTech, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, with that kind of money, what kind of warranty comes with this thing? How does it? I know it's not a mileage thing, but there's something for $1 million. They got to give some kind of guarantee or warranty, please.
There's different warranties for different parts of the truck. Let me just see. I believe I did bring that page with me. So there's the general is just 2 years warranty or 36,000 miles of limited warranty. The body structure is 10 years or 100,000 miles limited warranty. The idle mitigation system is a 1-year warranty. The aerial structure is 20 years or 100,000 miles limited warranty. And it kind of goes on from there. The waterway is 10 years. The pump is for 20 years. So it kind of spans all over the place with different items.
So if something breaks down, do they come to Port Alberni to fix it, or do you have to drive the truck over to Abbotsford, or?
Typically, it depends on what it is that needs that warranted service. For some items, we would explore an opportunity for our firefighter mechanic to actually complete the work and then bill back the company. On kind of the next level of graduated warranty work that would be required, they would send a service technician here into town. They may farm it out to some local shops, and then kind of on the higher end stuff, they may have to bring it back to Abbotsford. Welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Corbie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a 1999, is that correct? This truck?
Oh, 1997 is
97,
the
one that
latter
we're-
two.
okay.
Correct.
And how many hours does it have on it?
I don't have at my fingertips how many hours were on that truck.
How about miles or kilometers? Do
I
you
believe in kilometers, it's less than 100,000. So that truck, in terms of, it's one of these items where the truck isn't used on a day-to-day basis like the fire engine is. So the fire engine is out, it's doing inspections, responding to the nearly 2,000 calls that we had last year. The aerial only goes out for kind of structure fires and chimney fires at this time. We're also looking to, with this truck, there'll be more cabinetry space. So we're looking to consolidate the confined space and rope rescue equipment that's currently presently housed in a trailer that we would have to hook up and tow to wherever that scene was. So we'll consolidate that into this truck. It'll respond to those as well. So last year, as an example, we did 50 structure fires. So it would have responded on those 50 events and then been placed into service as and when needed.
And I'm trying to get a take on that idling feature, like how many hours would it actually sit idling?
Sure, yeah, it's a good one to explore. So with the engine, I think that it was more of a slam dunk in terms of that it's out all the time, it's on a medical call, it doesn't make sense for it to be sitting there burning diesel outside of somebody's residence. On this one, it's going to go out far less. So your return on investment from a monetary standpoint, I don't believe is there on this idle mitigation system. So solely would be to mitigate the greenhouse gases that are emitted from it, which of course are also mitigated because it's responding to, 60 calls versus a couple thousand.
Right. And it's really unfortunate that that used truck didn't pan out. How did that fall through your figures? You had about a month to deal with it, it looked like.
Yeah, so with the used truck, we found out about it just before we were going to release the RFP. We mobilized quickly, literally within 48 hours. We were on a plane to Calgary to go and check this truck out to see if it would meet our needs in town. We felt that it would. The problem is that we had no binding contract for that apparatus. So for whatever reason, the company that owned the truck elected to sell it, presumably to another municipality or another organization. And there was really no recourse for us because we didn't have a legally binding contract with them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question. It says on the recommendation, or the recommended motion, the 674,000 plus repayment plan. How is that? Tell me how that window is going to look, or somebody tell me how that window will look.
Sure. I'll start, and the Director of Finance can correct me if needed. So essentially the plan there is that we're going to borrow that money out of the equipment reserve fund and then repay that over the course of 10 years. So it'll be the 674 divided by 10 years, and each year we'll make that contribution back into IRF to repay it.
And the money comes from where?
That would come from operating.
From operating. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that question, is that in our draft financial plan currently to make those repayments to IRF? Okay, so that would be an increase to our financial plan for this year or beginning next year? Beginning next year when we get the truck. And at the same time as we are increasing or paying back what we are borrowing from IRF, would we be still saving for the new truck additional to that for replacement, of course, hopefully many, many, many years down the road. But Andrew, if you want to come up, absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with that one, what would happen is we purchased the new truck in 2023. That sets the new ERF replacement. So that lifetime of that truck, we would divide the lifetime of that truck, and then we have a 90% payback of that cost over that 20-year period with right now it's currently 2% inflationary increase. With the payback for the next 10 years, that would go into, that would increase the payback that we currently have planned for that truck, because it's paying back what is borrowed for this period, for this purchase, plus what is it's saving up for the next purchase. So, so for the next 10 years, that will be up approximately 65,000 to 70,000 higher than it currently is, plus the repayment of the truck or the replacement of the truck, is approximately at $40,000 more than it currently is for the ERF for that same unit. So.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And then, of course, this fire truck. You know, I remember when I started on council and we had this in a future year. It was 1.25 million was kind of the set number in the financial plan for a ladder truck purchase, and I think that had been up from prior years as well. Of course, we've extended the life of it, and so we've been able to save more along the way, which is great. But this fire truck is coming in significantly over what we anticipated for it. The last fire truck came in significantly over what we anticipated for it as well. Are we adjusting those ERF contributions to recognize these significant increases in what fire trucks are costing, or are we expecting this to be a shorter term kind of trend?
I believe that we need to review the ERF and our current inflationary rate, our 90% rate that we're putting away for all our vehicles and equipment. We're seeing across the board cost escalation for many of the pieces that we're looking at. So after we go through the budgeting process, I would like to bring back a report to council just on an ERF update to identify some of the cost escalations that we're realizing as we look at replacement over the next few years. So.
Thank you. And I know it's a larger issue rather than just specific to fire trucks, but I think when we see it in fire trucks, it has a very significant financial impact when they come in over what we have saved for them, because they are such large purchase items. So looking forward to that review, and thanks for the information. I have Councillor Solda and then Councillor Washington.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree that the ERF fund needs to be looked at, and I'm quite concerned because this has come to council years ago, obviously, and we had the same conversation. Do we get it? Do we not? And what's the advantage? And if you don't, I was just saying to the mayor earlier, we don't have a fire in our own yard. We don't understand how important it is to us. So I do recognize it, but man, it's really hard to weigh yes or no, and I understand that part. Now, so my question is regarding the old fire truck. I'm always told that it's not worth, we don't get very much money for it and stuff like this. And also, we pay GST, don't we, on the new fire truck? Will we get GST back if we do pay GST? And is there money that we can, from the sale of the old one, or what are we doing?
Madam Mayor, with the question about GST, we get the GST back. We don't get the PST back. So the GST is an income tax credit, so that's not considered a cost. We just have to pay it and receive that back, but we will have to pay the PST on this unit. As far as the fire truck, I'll leave the chief to answer that one.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So with regards to the truck that we currently have, there was a recommendation within our fire underwriter survey report that, I'm just trying to pull it up here so I can read it verbatim, essentially saying that when apparatus ladder 2 is replaced at 25 years, it could be kept as a reserve apparatus, which would result in 100% credit for this grading item. Currently, there is no reserve ladder apparatus credited. So we did once we realized that we could push the trailer out of the building, we were able to do some additional measurements inside of the building, and we can actually hold ladder 2 in the fire hall that we currently have with no additional modifications. And so that would be our plan, tentatively anyway, is that we would hold on to ladder 2 for those additional 5 years, which would then give us additional credit within the fire underwriter survey. If we were to go ahead and sell this truck, it would go at auction. The amount is really not very much at all. I've heard for aerial trucks, they tend to go a bit more than, I think our last engine went for $5,000 when we auctioned it off. The aerial might get 4 times that, maybe $20,000. It's obviously a low enough amount of money that, as you would have remembered driving into Nanaimo in previous years, there was somebody who purchased an aerial truck and was using it for advertising along Highway 19. So I'm sure that the truck didn't cost them all that much money in order for them to use it for that purpose. I think we would get far more benefit within the community adding it to our reserve capacity.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was my question exactly about where do old fire trucks go when they retire. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So you just mentioned keeping the old truck. What is the cost associated with keeping it in terms of annual maintenance? And obviously it's, a very old fire truck. Is there really adequate value in it to us to keep it and have to work on it and maintain it? And are we going to see a budget item to keep it? Is it already worked in?
Well, I think that it comes at an advantageous time, because right now our fleet has never been older than it is presently, because we haven't received our new fire engine yet, and the ladder 2 is presently our frontline truck. So we anticipate that we're going to see a reduction in our maintenance costs over the next number of years, as we have 2 trucks that will be under warranty, etc. So the plan is that certainly we don't anticipate needing any additional budget in order to cover off the maintenance associated with retaining this truck. And if it turns out that we look at it and it doesn't seem feasible, or we're spending too much money, or there's a big item that comes out of the blue, I think that we would then look at parting ways with that truck at that point in time. But as long as it's costing us a nominal amount of money, I think that it does retain value as a reserve piece of apparatus.
I guess what I'm hearing is that there is an opportunity to reduce our maintenance budget, basically, potentially, when our 2 new fire trucks arrive, this one and the one we've just ordered. And yeah, I'm wondering if there really is value in us keeping that, whether it's a nominal cost or not. As we know, the cost of the fire service generally is quite high. The value is really high and important as well. But if there's any opportunities for savings, and is there an opportunity to donate this truck to one of the rural halls to maintain on their budget instead of our budget, rather than us keeping it and still receive that service?
Yeah, I think what's probably best is we certainly have an abundance of time between now and the time that the new aerial would arrive. The soonest that it would get here is 395 days from the time that we award it to them, up to I believe it's 425 days. So during that period of time, on the sooner end than the later end, what I can do is we can analyze what it would cost for us to keep it, bring that as a report to council, and then talk about it at that point.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly supportive of getting the new truck. I do have a few more questions here still, but I wouldn't be supportive of keeping the old truck without really having a firm understanding of what the cost of that is.
Sure.
Especially if there's potential for it to still be utilized in the valley and have that cost be someone else's.
Sure.
And still get the value of it. So that will be helpful to know just once we are able to get some additional information on that. My next question is about updates to the fire hall. What is required for this truck? And is there a budget for it, and is it already in the budget?
Yeah, so actually it was approved for last year for $88,000, I believe it is, to undergo structural modifications for the replacement of this truck. We've already had contractors come in and begin to assess what that would be, but we certainly feel that we can accomplish those structural upgrades in order to accommodate this truck within budget.
Okay, great. The platform, so I think what I'm understanding about, and I should start by saying the upgrade from the 75-foot ladder to a 100-foot ladder makes perfect sense to me. I think we want to make sure that we are getting a fire truck that works for the community that we're building, and as we know, our community is changing a lot right now. I'm not as clear on the need for the platform versus, I guess, the standard ladder, which is what we have now. So because it is an upgrade, could you explain that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so essentially the ladder truck that we currently have is more of a means to get from one place to another. Certainly once you're at the top, you can manage the waterway from there, whereas with the platform it becomes a workspace of its own. So you can board the platform, go up with tools, work from a safe space, say on a smaller call like a chimney fire. Now we would have to position the ladder and have firefighters kind of trying to work literally off the tip of a ladder in order to mitigate a chimney fire. Whereas in this case, much like a BC Hydro or a Shaw would do in their style of bucket truck, we can come up right up against the chimney. We have a stable, safe work platform to be in, and we can go about our business. So I would say that that's one major advantage. I would say that another is that it's quicker to get to our destination. So if we have people who are in need of rescue, or we need to just apply water, whatever the case might be, right now we set up the ladder, and then somebody has to physically, obviously, walk up the ladder in order to get there, climb the ladder. Here we would simultaneously transport the firefighter at the same time that we are setting the ladder up. So I think that we can get there more expeditiously. Another advantage of the ladder is it's designed as a high point for rope rescue or confined space rescue. So we can set it up, rig up our rope rescue gear, and get down into that confined space, or if somebody's over an embankment. So we bring our own high point with us. Another concern that this mitigates is where you have a multifamily residential type of a building, where you have a smoke-charged common hallway, and so people are unable to exit their suites into the hallway in order to get to safety. So with the ladder truck, we position to where we are. You then have to convince somebody who may not have boarded a ladder in the last 40 years to get on something that's 100 feet tall and climb down with you. And then that person has to come all the way to the bottom before you can move to the next suite over. Whereas with a platform, it's more like an elevator almost. You just get the person on board and you can go to the next. Which also brings me to the other, when I think elevators, the other advantage is you have people who are experiencing mobility issues. Certainly, there's people that just physically will not be able to climb down a ladder. And with this, you just need to bring the platform alongside them and bring them across the threshold, which is, not much greater than, going from the walkway onto a SkyTrain car or something, right? So it also opens up that ability to rescue people with mobility issues as well.
Thank you, that's super helpful. Just thinking back, actually, as you're talking about kind of like the bucket style, I'm remembering that we used to have a bucket truck, I think when I was a kid at least. The fire hall had some kind of bucket attached to one of the trucks that could do something kind of similar, so.
It was the previous rendition to Ladder 2 that we have now was actually a platform truck. Okay,
yeah. Great, so upgrade now, but going back to something that we had that obviously worked for a long time.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is just around, could you give me maybe a bit more of an understanding around the canoe system? I think my concern is this is a very large purchase. And it seems like the canoe system is a mechanism to sole source that purchase versus going out for RFP and getting a quote from maybe all the companies out there. Are we getting the best value, and how can we know we're getting the best value for the truck that we want through this system?
Sure. Maybe I'll hand it over to the Director of Finance to go over the canoe system. And then if you'd like, I can talk about some of the trucks that have been awarded through an RFP process recently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fire Chief. So, Madam Mayor, with Canoe, it's something that is fairly new for British Columbia and members of Civic Info BC. But it has been a platform as far as procurement across Canada, in Ontario and the eastern provinces, and I believe Manitoba also. And what it does is it provides the buying power for governments and institutions that are party to this, and because we are members of Civic Info BC, we are automatically enrolled and included in that program. What happens with Canoe is they will take and issue RFPs at different intervals and allow all these proponents to bid on this platform, which then allows the municipalities to be party of this RFP process without going through that RFP individually. So it's a collaborative procurement process. It allows the best value for taxpayers' dollars, and it is reviewed by Canoe staff. And the city does not pay anything for this membership. The vendors pay an administration fee to be party to this Canoe platform. And it's called Sourcewell, and it's actually used in the United States also. So I think it's 55,000 members that are party to this, and it allows that ability for that buying power, and not, especially when we have a large fire truck or a large purchase, to get the best value we can, and not just have a one-off procurement that we might not get all the vendors bidding on. So it allows that interaction and that ensuring that we do get best value for taxpayer dollars.
Okay, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my understanding is that the Beaver Creek, Sprout Lake, Cherry Creek fire departments aren't underwrite. They don't have to have a underwritten aerial truck. There's just because they're rural and not professional, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak to what I haven't seen their fire underwriter survey, and I'm not sure how current it is and what recommendations might be in them. Certainly, we know that they do not have an aerial of their own.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it might not be suitable for them either because of the age of the ladder 2, existing ladder 2?
I've certainly floated it out there that I especially since we didn't think that we would have the space, I wanted to retain it in the valley. Mm-hmm. I think that, there's different fire chiefs within the valley that are kind of mulling that over. Some may have space, some may not have space. It is potentially an option and something that we'll explore and bring back as part of that report.
And one final question for me, Madam Mayor. The platform truck, is it possible to send it up without anybody in it and actually have a nozzle on there that you could direct into a fire if you're not sure of noxious fumes or something like that? It could do an attack on its own without a body being up there? Yeah,
that's right. So we can set it up so that it can act unmanned and suppress a fire that way. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Solda.
Just a quick one, Madam Mayor. Regarding ladder 2 there, I actually have a little note down here. I'm kind of concerned too about the upkeep and how much it's going to cost. Is it worthwhile to keep it, or, between insurance and maintenance and everything like that? So I have the same kind of concern. And is it better to get rid of it and take the 20,000 and put it in our pocket, or however it works? And the other one too is when you talk about the 88,000 for the building, have you also have an inflation cost in there, like a contingency for inflation? Because we know building keeps escalating, and I'm just kind of curious because I don't want to come back and ask for more money. to renovate the building so this truck can fit in.
Yeah, and so it will be, it's not something that we have to project forward. It'll be kind of as soon as we award on the truck, then we'll look to move forward with those haul modifications to accept the truck. And we're confident that we'll be able to do that within budget.
And for a, who's going to be doing the work, or are you going to be putting an RFP out?
We don't know who's going to be doing the work. I guess depending on what it looks like on the initial kind of maybe not formalized quotes that we get, we'll reference the procurement policy, and if it requires us to go out to RFP, we'll do that. If it requires us to get multiple quotes, we'll go that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I think we've got all of the information we need probably about the truck, which is great. Council, we haven't given a lot of conversation yet to the option of with or without the idle mitigation. And so we basically have two options or three options to move forward. Of course, we could put this off, not make a decision today, which is not preferred, I would imagine. We can move forward with just the truck and award the contract, or we could move forward with the truck with the idle mitigation. Are there questions, or is there a preference? Councillor Solda.
So, Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor, if we went with the idle mitigation, isn't the province making it mandatory in like 5 years to be carbon neutral type of thing? Wouldn't this be part of it? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know, because we talk about if a truck or a vehicle's idling, it's carbon, right? So.
I wouldn't have that answer, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think regardless, it's absolutely a step, you know, toward reducing our greenhouse gases. I think my question is, and I guess I don't have a thorough enough understanding of how, you know, how much benefit we would really get from $50,000 spent here versus $50,000 invested in a different green initiative, given that this truck is not going to be out constantly. And that said, I think probably, I mean, any reduction is a good thing. Scott, you look like you have a comment to add.
I guess I would just add, given the chief's comments, that it doesn't go out frequently, and the idle mitigation is only going to kick into place when it's not actively fighting a fire. It means when it's out just sitting someplace. When it's fighting a fire, whether it's got the idle, it's on full bore. So I guess council needs to weigh, yes, the idle mitigation will reduce its greenhouse gas to a certain amount, but given the use and the amount of times that this truck will just go out and just sit there in neutral, won't be very much. So I don't think there'll be a lot of carbon reduction in this case. And that's just my opinion on that front.
Thank you. Anything to add to that, Chief
I would tend to agree that with a finite, and you'll see that if you go to, you don't need to actually go to the recommendations, but if you go down, the number one is without the idle mitigation system. I put it in there because I know that you know, the city is declared the climate emergency, and certainly that's a priority for the city. But with a finite number of dollars, I could see the additional $50,000 just, you know, as an example, being allocated towards new purchases that would have been gas-powered light vehicles becoming electric vehicles or something of the like. The operation of the aerial will be completely unaffected whether we add the idle mitigation or not.
Thank you. I think that's a great comment, and both of those are really helpful in making this decision. And I think you're right. We probably would get more value out of, as we have when we've had the opportunity to switch some of our vehicles to electric or even hybrids. Putting that $50,000 toward making that upgrade when we're changing out vehicles will probably make a lot more of a reduction for vehicles that are out and about all the time. So with that, would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor Corbie.
Madam Mayor, I will go with option one, and I move that council amend the City of Port Alberni 2022 to 2026 financial plan bylaw number 5045-2022, increasing the funding allocation by $674,000, 879, pardon me, such a big number, $674,879 for an aerial truck with funding from the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Further, that council approve a repayment plan for 10 years to recover the $674,879,000 back to the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund beginning in 2023.
Seconded by Councillor Washington. Any comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
And that council award the contract for the 100-foot platform truck to Safe Tech Emergency Vehicles Limited for the price of $1,863,886 plus applicable taxes to be paid after a successful final inspection in 2023.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any final comments? Councillor Washington?
This is a firm quote, Chief?
It
Once
is.
you put the order in, that's all they're gonna take away from you? Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mike,
Thank you.
for all your work on this. I know it's taken the whole time I've been on council for us to get to this point, so really happy to have this purchase moving forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, on to report number 3 from the Director of Finance. We have council chambers audio-visual upgrades.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through the pandemic, the city realized that the benefit of having a hybrid model or meeting format would be beneficial, just to have that communication ability with delegations or members of the public that cannot be here. With that, we did get restart funding from the province to support some of the operational needs as far as COVID impacts, but also where we can engage or allow for that interaction electronically, we could spend some capital. So this is a request to council to have a capital expenditure from those restart funds. The ACRD has some hybrid options, and I think some members of council have experienced that, and allows for that meeting to be held that way. But currently, with the system that we have here in council chambers, there are some challenges, and it's really not up to the standards that we need to conduct the hybrid meetings. So in the past summer here, staff were tasked with looking at upgrading the audio-visual equipment within the chamber councils. And it was difficult getting some of the quotes and getting responses back due to limited supply. And I imagine that other municipalities were doing the same thing, upgrading their audio-visual. And with that, we did get some quotes, but they were delayed. And they varied between the quote that we have recommended here at just over $71,000 up to $95,000. So with that, we got 2 quotes and 1 verbal that was in between, but at this time we are recommending that we use the funds that we have available to upgrade council chambers with the audiovisual equipment that we were quoted for in the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, we need to update. I remember the old microphones, and they were pretty lousy, and you hear from the public that this is not even any better, especially when they're watching, and there's problems all the time. So can you tell me, will that include visual as well as the mics, and does it include the other room if we have if people are in the other room and they need to watch and hear us?
Madam Mayor, it will include the mics and visual and just the opportunity to see and have those people present electronically. So we'd be able to put them up on the screen and have that interaction and discussion, just like you would be here at the podium.
Okay.
For the committee room, we also have an upgrade. That was a much lower cost, and we've already got the equipment for that.
Mm-hmm. And
And we are just waiting for that to arrive, I believe.
So And one other thing, Madam Mayor, does this also include if the public want to engage through Twyla or however a little easier? Will it make it much easier for them to do some questions online?
Madam Mayor, that is the intent with this, is just to have that hybrid model so that it allows the public to engage with council.
Excellent. I just want to be clear so the public knows that this is for them, not just to benefit us. It's to benefit them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Washington.
Thank you. So I'm understanding that if Councillor Haggard wished to attend, she'd take up a corner of the screen, or there'd be a monitor replacing her here? Is that how I'm understanding that?
Sorry, yeah, I'll just interject. So council's aware that you can participate electronically now, but typically by phone. But yes, it is intended that if we were to move forward with the equipment upgrades, members of council wanting to participate could be seen on one of the screens and yes, taking up a box. It would, as you know, council, we don't require any amendments to the bylaw right now to allow council's electronic participation, but a bylaw amendment would come forward once the equipment's in place. We'll kind of align with that to allow for that participation on the part of the public in any delegations.
And to the Director of Finance, is it fair to ask how much is in the COVID-19 Restart Fund? Or-
Madam Mayor, good question. The intent is to have that information to council after we wrap up some of the work I'm doing on the agenda for next week's Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment that after my daughter was born last term, I did participate electronically quite a number of times by phone. And it was very challenging to really be engaged in any kind of real way over the phone. And with the system that we have where, you know, if you want to watch online to be able to see speakers and things like that, there's a delay. So you're watching online, what you're hearing is different. It just, it was a really, just not an ideal way to be able to actually participate when you are away. And I think it's great when we do have councillors who can't be physically here, but, you know, do want to participate. I think it'd be fantastic for some of our consultants. It would be really nice for, you know, delegations who are coming for different purposes to not always have to be in person. Although the only thing I would caution is that I think we want to make sure when we rewrite our bylaw that we put some restrictions on, because there is, what we don't want is for people to choose to be electronic instead of in person when they can attend in person. I think that having people here is so much nicer, but we do want to make sure that, you know, allowing for any kind of scenarios that do come up, if people have to be away, that they're still able to have an input and engage in a meaningful way. So really supportive of this and excited to be upgrading. Councillor Solda, would you like to read the motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the council allocate $75,000 of COVID-19 restart funding to undertake audio-visual upgrades in council chambers. And
Thank you. Any comments on this piece? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
And Madam Mayor, I move that council authorize staff to accept the quote from audio-visual upgrades in council chambers from the Pacific Audio Works in the amount of $71,476.14, including taxes plus associated travel costs.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Corbie. Seeing no comment?
Was there any local audio-visual people that were, like, we started local and then tried to stay as close to home as possible? Sorry.
Madam Mayor, Pacific Audio Works is actually about as local as we could get. There's a very limited selection of companies that install this type of equipment on the island. Another one does have a base in Victoria and Nanaimo, but they were not able to get a quote to us in time for this meeting.
Thank you. Nope, that's great. Okay. Seeing no more questions on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 4 from the Director of Corporate Services, we have appointment of election officer and deputy election officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. So 2022 marks the year for general local elections that will take place in the fall. In order that we plan accordingly and start preparing for that work, Council is being asked to appoint the Chief Election Officer, and in this case, 2 Deputy Chief Election Officers. It's outlined in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Corbie, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the City of Port Alberni Council, pursuant to Section 58(1) and 2 of the Local Government Act, appoint Twyla Slonsky as Chief Election Officer for conducting the 2022 general local election, with the power to appoint other election officials as required for the administration and conduct of the 2022 general local election. Further, that Sarah Darling and Tanis Feltrin be appointed as Deputy Chief Election Officers for the 2022 general local election.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Washington. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. No bylaws today, so correspondence for action. We have, I think, just 2 items. 2 items. The first one is a letter dated January 24th, 2022 from the Prom Parade Committee Chair requesting access to city streets for ADSS graduating class of 2022. Are there any questions on this? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Washington, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council authorize the ADSS 2022 Parent Prom Committee access to city streets on Saturday, June 25, 2022 from 5 to 6:30 p.m. for the purpose of a prom parade from Butte Street to 10th Avenue to Rogers Street, ending at Athletic Hall, 3727 Rogers Street, subject to the notification of emergency service and BC Transit, consultation with all affected businesses and residents, implementation of a traffic plan, provisions of standing liability insurance in the amount of $2 million minimum, and a COVID-19 safety plan or communicable disease plan in accordance with the provincial health orders and guidelines in effect at the time of the event.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Corbie. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the second item is a letter dated February 1st, 2022 from Director Access to City Streets for the Wounded Warrior Run, so requesting access to city streets. Are there any questions on this one? Okay, I think we're all familiar with the Wounded Warrior Run. Councillor Solda, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the council authorize Wounded Warrior Run BC access to the city streets on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 for the purpose of the Wounded Warrior Run from Highway 4 Johnson Road to Gertrude Street to Rogers Street to Victoria Quay, ending at the Port Alberni Legion branch number 293, subject to the notification of emergency services and BC Transit, consultation with the affected businesses and residents, implementation of a traffic plan, provision of a standard liability insurance in the amount of $2 million minimum, COVID-19 safety plan, and communicable disease plan in accordance with the provincial health orders and guidelines in the effect at the time of the event.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Corbie. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And one proclamation today, an email dated February 3rd, 2022 from the BC Epilepsy Society requesting that Council proclaim March 26th as International Purple Day in Port Alberni. And I will move that we proclaim the day as requested.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And correspondence for information. Twyla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So 14 items on Council's correspondence summary today, and I'll highlight a few of those. Correspondence from Randy Fraser regarding the sale of the Martin Mars water bomber. We have an update from Stats Canada, who recently released the 2021 census data. Shows Port Alberni up in population to 19,200, and that's approximately an increase of 3.3% from 2016. We have Heritage Week 2022, which is February 21st to the 27th. We have additional correspondence from local agencies expressing support for public washroom facilities. Correspondence from Abbey Field Houses requesting dedication of parkland. We have correspondence from the owners of Twin City Brewery, again on the temporary expanded service area for patios and looking for permanency as we approach the June 1st deadline. Correspondence from Lefebvre and Company regarding development approval process and suggestions on fast tracking the process. Communication from Elizabeth Parfit regarding concerns about eliminating the access via Dunbar once the city moves ahead with improvements at the Dunbar Street and 10th Avenue intersection. Communication from Rebecca Terapaki regarding the location of public washroom facilities. And correspondence from District of Stewart, City of Victoria, and the Village of Cumberland expressing support on a variety of items.
Thank you very much. I know that council had some questions around item number 1, or at least wanted to just give a brief update. Scott, are you able to provide that? That's just around sale of the Martin Mars water bomber and the letter that we have on our agenda.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. I guess I would just say that the city is not considering acquisition of either of the two Martin Mars water bombers.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up on that from council? Okay. Another one I wanted to just follow up for a bit of an update on is the Twin City Brewing temporary expanded service area, and of course the desire to make patio permanent as the provincial government is encouraging us to apply for permanency. I know that we did begin that process, just wondering, I know we don't have an update yet, I guess just what our kind of expected timeline is on that work.
So staff is working on trying to develop criteria about how we would consider any application for permanency on our public streets or sidewalks or parking areas. So staff is working on that. It has not been finalized, but we know that deadline is coming somewhat rapidly, so we will try and get that done sooner than later. And what it is trying to develop the criteria and requirements where businesses could make a submission to make that request, and that we would be evaluating it, certainly from a safety, public access, and a variety of points of view before we ever considered permanency.
And I think we were working on developing a bylaw for that. Am I correct? A bylaw and a policy for sidewalk patios?
I don't think we were needing a bylaw necessarily. Certainly we were needing criteria to be determined about how we would consider those, and then they would have to come to council.
Okay, so my understanding was not that we were going to develop a criteria for how we would, handle the process, but more that we would develop a set of guidelines so that businesses would have something in front of them to be able to develop their plans around, rather than kind of guessing at what the city is going to allow or not allow on a one-off.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's my word of criteria is kind of what you were saying. So
okay.
Maybe we're doing different words, but the intent is the same.
As long as that's the direction we're moving in, that's fantastic. Thank you. Any other items councillors would like to highlight? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item E, more about the public washrooms 24/7. I know we discussed it briefly at our last council meeting. I just wondering if we've got anything going, and B, with all the letters of support from like the First Nations bands and stuff like that, if we've pursued any partnering possibilities to reach out to partner with somebody to get these things going sooner than later.
We haven't at this point, and we haven't had any offers from any of the letter writers that I've seen yet to help manage public washrooms. That said, I think council directed Councillor Poon, who is our community action team representative in Councillor Hager's absence, to bring the conversation back to the community action team, who facilitates some of these groups, and they all work together at that table to start a conversation about what it would look like, and to see if there is a willingness for one of the organizations to work with the city and try to develop something. There's one other and I wanted to highlight for you, but it has just slipped my mind. If it comes back to me, I'll let you know. But yeah, no progress to this point. Oh, I did just want to say that I noted in the paper that the AV News wrote an article about this, and they quoted that the city of Vancouver spent $500,000 on installing a Portland loo, which was the bathroom model that we had talked about at our last meeting. And I was a bit disappointed that they used that, because that washroom was put like in the middle of nowhere where there was absolutely no infrastructure, and certainly not like, they had to put in, from what I read about that specific situation, like a ridiculous amount of infrastructure just to get water and sewer to that location, because it was quite remote in one of their parks. So it was actually talked about a lot on Vancouver Chats about how ridiculous it was that $500,000 was spent on that washroom. So I think it was a bit misleading, not intentionally, but if we were to put a Portland loo into our community, it would not be anywhere near $500,000. So I thought that was important just to share, because I did see some comments online about why the city would be considering spending $500,000 on a bathroom following that article. So other communities have put them in the neighborhood of, to buy and install 150 to 200,000. So I think it is something that we could look at, but of course nothing that's been added to our budget at this point yet.
I still want to see it get sorted.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Corbie.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, number J, from Elizabeth Parfit, Dunbar Street and 10th Avenue intersection. Would this be a letter we could send to the traffic committee? Or is there anything, or is that the planning department?
Scott.
It's not the planning department, it would be the engineering department.
Oh, okay,
And,
we'll get there.
As our city engineer had previously reported to council, they've been looking at a number of intersections that might need safety improvements. This is one of them. I know they're considering this as well as the intersection of 10th and Argyle, and when those two improvements are to be made and what phases. So they're still working on this and the other one and determining the best ways to move forward. But
So basically, there's no need to panic at this moment. The person who wrote this letter, just
that would be my advice.
due course. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think just, for the public's awareness, council had directed staff following the intersection review that was done to make some changes to that intersection. However, when we had the conversation, we also directed that changes be made to Argyle and 10th Avenue, and that planning work is still underway. So what we'll see more than likely is those being done together rather than in a one-off kind of situation. But before we get to that point, I would imagine the engineer will bring us back some more information. Thank you. Councillor Corbie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two things. One, I seen in the Industrial Heritage, Museum and Heritage Commission minutes, Mr. Les Stevens requested the ability to fire the steam tractor. Do we know if that happened? It did, eh? Who do you go through for something like that?
He just had to get it approved so that we could put a fire in it from the underwriter. So he got his approval, and they did a test run just behind the arena, the old arena, just back and forth, just to make sure she was going good. So
Okay, thank you.
up and running.
Good. And the second thing is a letter from Mr. Lefebvre regarding fast-tracking the development. Has anybody been in touch with him, and is there some concrete examples there that we could utilize to speed the process along?
One of our development planners has this file. There has been an application made, and he has been in communication with the consultant hired by Mr. Lefebvre. I guess I would comment that this application does not just involve a standard development permit. It includes a lane closure process that council will have to consider, a variance process that council will have to consider, and a subdivision. So it's a little more complicated of a project, and we do take applications as they come in and do our best to process them in a speedy way. But I guess I would say that this one isn't just a straight development permit. And of course, we are always open to ways to improve, and we're always looking at ways to improve our processing time. And so that would be my comment on that. But yes, we have been in communications with the applicants, consultants on this file.
Thanks, and I think that how I read the letter at least wasn't necessarily, although it's always about someone's development in some way, but wasn't necessarily about his specific application, but rather just process in general. And I think it's always helpful when we hear from developers, especially who develop in other places, what kind of works and what doesn't, and from their perspective at least won't always match with what we're able to do. But I thought it was a good suggestion, so I did reach back out to Mr. Lefebvre following the letter just to thank him for writing and investing in the community as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing the application on that one, because it's just such an important area of town for us to see more density built into. Okay, seeing no more hands up on the correspondence, I will move receipt. Seconded by Councillor Solda. All in favor? Carried. No report from in camera today, and we do have council reports. Councillor Corbie, thank you for your thorough written report, and specifically I really appreciated your notes on the Truck Loggers Association conference. I was able to watch only one of the sessions. I know it was a condensed, just kind of almost like a full day, but a condensed version from what they normally have, and it was really great, but appreciated the notes that you did provide there. Any questions about Councillor Corbie's report or items councillors would like to add? Councillor Corbie.
Well, I would just like to elaborate. I think it's actually my final bullet in that report. And if you have the ability to somehow see the session that Don Wright partaked in, this guy's got a Harvard doctorate in economics. He was the BCIT president for 5 years. He was Premier Horgan's deputy minister. He's now retired, but you know, this is required reading or watching for, I think, industry folk as well as government. He spells out two things. One, industry really lost their social license. And you don't have to look much further than our harbor quite often when mills are shut down and they're exporting logs to see how that came about. He gave a bunch of examples, especially the amalgamation of all the companies over the years, and they've lost their voice. But secondly, he talked about, you know, the environment we live in now is really fueled by real estate, and probably more so the Lower Mainland real estate. But this cannot go on, and there will be a time when the resource sector really does come back and lead this province. So if there's some way that you can get a hold of that video, maybe on the Truck Loggers website or something, it's really good reading, and the guy, he knows his stuff, and I got a lot out of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think their videos are still actually in the conference portal, so I didn't see that session, so I'll certainly go back in and look and see if I can send it to council as well. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Any items of new business? Okay, seeing none. Any questions from members of the public? Seeing none. Would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Corbie. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.